Okay, mode.
That's the word distract. I really hard time when I used to work with passion.
All right, folks. I am Arthur Brill, and I am the person who created the meetup.com group. I did not create you guys. I did not create this room. I created something online that is akin to a Facebook page. Okay, so even though it calls me organizer because I am the person who registered it with an email address, I'm just one of you guys. I just made something, gave something a space to exist. Okay. We've been live for 1 week. We have 41 registered members. We actually have more than members than that because you guys are 7 by yourselves. So, and there's 21 people here, not counting myself, so I'm 22. I think that's pretty good for something that's a week old. I created a calendar using Meetup has tools to create events on a calendar. And I went to the Iron Horse website, I went to the Hanover Arts and Activities website, I went to Townhound website, I went to Iron Horse, O'Banks, everything that I could find, Randolph-Macon College, and added events. And if you look at the events just for the month of May, I was astounded how much is going on every single day in Ashland. I sent an email with a link to that calendar to the board members for the Main Street Association, Alexis Thompson with the Town of Ashland Economic Development Committee, and she took that calendar and linked it to the town's Facebook page. So we are now, as a group, linked to the Facebook page of the Town of Ashland. And it was done simply because I made something useful. You know, it's like nobody had taken all of those particular things and put them in one place. And what they are is they're live performing arts. They're the music acts that are at O'Banks, that are at Ashland Coffee and Tea. Jake Moore, Saturday mornings at Ashland Coffee and Tea, kind of live jam that anybody can join in. And something that I've taken part in a couple of times, but you know, it's not something that's on the map. It's not on the calendar. He's going to start doing the alternate weekends at 10 o'clock in the morning over at the Caboose. Again, that's just something I go over there at least a few times a week, talk and have my cup of coffee, and I find out a little bit of what's going on. It's like, oh, I'll put it on the calendar. It's just a cool thing to have something where people can go and look at all this stuff that's happening. So there's a lot of important stuff going on in Ashland. I'm not saying that it's a be-all and end-all calendar, but for the purpose of arts and entertainment, I think it's a pretty cool thing. And certainly, and this is the great thing about Meetup, any of you can go and add stuff to that calendar. You can do a suggested meetup, and you give a date, and it actually lets you put in a location that ties into Google Maps and GPS and all that kind of stuff. So it's very powerful what you as a member of this group can do. So don't look at me and say, oh, we want the group to do this and we want the group to do that, because we're not a monolithic group. You want to do something, suggest a meetup. You know, somebody asked me if this was going to be a politically activist group, because I have a lot of crazy ideas and I tend to like sort of spout off on things, and you know, that's my personal views. It's not a group view. So it's like I said, if somebody wants to organize an Occupy Ashland on the steps of the town lawn, post it as a meetup, you know, see if you can get people to come. That's perfectly fine. If you want to have a church knitting group, you know, post it as a meetup. Everybody here can do whatever they want. I don't want to have monthly meet and greets, you know. We're all cool, you know, this is nice, this is who we are, but this may be the only time all these people are ever in the same room again. You know, you're going to find your own little niches and cliques or whatever that is, and don't think of it as a bad thing. I'm envisioning this crazy Venn diagram where there's dancers and musicians and drummers and video, and people have multiple interests, and you might overlap with other people. It's just a place to be aware of one another. I know all of you people exist. Not everybody in Ashland does. There's a lot of stuff going on that the people who talk about arts and culture in Ashland aren't even aware of as being existent. I see this as a group to provide opportunities for socializing. You know, don't feel excluded if you find out that somebody had a little get-together and you weren't invited, because, you know, that's everybody's prerogative, is not to invite you. okay? I don't want it to be this sort of like, all this little back whispering of, oh my God, they've got this little thing going on the side. That's the point, is to have these little things going on the side. Professional networking. I do a lot of things. Jody and I moved to Ashland 17 years ago. We lived in Ashland on the railroad tracks for 6 years. We built a house out past the Ashland Berry Farm, so we lived kind of Doswell-ish too. And Jody teaches piano. She teaches at the Hanover Arts and Nativity Center. You've been teaching there for how many years? 16 years, okay? So Jody is an Ashland piano teacher. She teaches at Randolph-Macon College. She accompanies the choral group at Randolph-Macon College. She just performed in a Leonard Bernstein concert yesterday that I missed because I was working in Tyson's Corner. But from what I hear, it was fantastic. I did get to hear the rehearsal on Sunday night. I've worked with several people in this room. Tom, who's doing videotaping, is another multi-talented person. Tom is a fantastic sculptor, and Tom and I have worked on sculptural pieces for churches around Virginia, and we even did a fountain on the south side of Richmond that's like one of the first in the world of its kind. So you've got, one of the things I learned about trying to survive as an artist is you have to be versatile, because your little niche, you may not be able to make a steady income, so you might make a lot of little niches. And so all of us in this room, I would wager, have multiple things that make us tick. So the idea of networking, I did a music video for Colin and I together. Colin wrote and recorded a song called Transmit Dopamine. So Colin had asked if I would get involved, help him do a music video for it, and so we shot it in Ashland. Tom is also has a video production company. I learned how to edit in Final Cut Pro over at Tom's. So, and Adam, right? Adam is another video professional. So, we've got neat little interesting ways. So if I get a gig, or Adam gets a gig, or Tom gets a gig to produce a video, and he needs a set designer, prop builder, art department guy, that's me, If he needs somebody who's better with sound, maybe that's Adam. I don't do sound. I really am not a cameraman. I don't like being behind a camera, because there's people that do that and are much better at doing it than I. And that's always been my thing, is I like bringing in people who are better than I am at doing what they do, because that's the way you get the best product. I know what I do well, I know what I do great. I also know what people do better than me, And so, we can use this for networking. I'm also really, really big on mentor-apprentice relationships. So much of what I've learned and what I do is because people have been willing to teach me to do it. I saw people who were doing bronze sculpture, who were doing movie special effects. I mean, I'm a guy that worked on freaking Terminator 2, and I said, can I hang out in your basement and watch you work? And I learned how to do life casting and prosthetics and stuff just from hanging out with this guy. My friend Tony does low-budget special effects movies. He worked on Evil Dead 2. I mean, that is like way cool if you are into horror films. And I learned how to do down and dirty special effects, high-end, expensive special effects. And so then when I would get a project, I would weigh all these different ways of doing it. Well, this is how John would do it, but that's how Tony would do it, and this is my budget, and if I do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but these are the only supplies I can get. So having that mentor-apprentice type, the old school studio relationship, professional referrals. Anytime you get a job comes your way that you hear about that somebody might be able to do in the group, just say, hey, either go to the group, drop an email, do something. Say, if you're looking for a piano teacher, here's Jody. If you're looking for video people, if you're looking for alternative healing, okay? Kyle is a very interesting person to talk to in this town. Collaboration, doing things that take more than one person. You want to do a project, but you can't do it by yourself. One of my big holes in what I do, because I do big giant props for high-end events, $1 million weddings and stuff, and I design, when we did the project with the fountain, I designed a steel armature that I had to sub out to a metal fabrication shop. And I see you guys want to do a welding studio at your barn. I'm like, this is such a huge piece of my puzzle where I can say, hey, let's work together, let's do something. Another big one is solidarity, and artists tend to get dumped on. And that's because we allow ourselves to get dumped on. And if we stand together and put our foot down and say, no, this is not how we do business, you know, I won't do stuff for free. I'm worth X number of dollars an hour, and so is everybody that I know in the group that I work with. You know, we don't donate our time. Yeah, we'll give you a break, whatever, but you know, a united front saying we're tired as artists of being viewed as the people who are the poor, starving people who are lucky just to get exposure. Because you know what? Exposure isn't worth crap. It's not. I've never gotten a job from exposure. And nobody's ever seen anything I've done and said, hey, who did that? I want to hire that person. I've been able to refer clients that I'm talking to jobs that I've done and say, well, here's something, and if they like it, then that's fine. But nobody's ever come to me from some, and let me tell you, I've gotten exposure. Millions of people have seen the things that I put my hands on, from haunted houses at King's Dominion and Busch Gardens to Broadway shows to TV commercials. What this group, what I don't want this group to be, is I don't want it to be as a group political. Again, if you have politics and you want to use it as a launching pad to find some other people to get together, fine. But as a group, that's not what it's about. I do not want it to be elitist, and I do not want there to be a, oh, that's not art, they don't belong. But as who belongs to this group, anybody who thinks they belong, belongs. My dad was supervisor of design for Homelight chainsaws. He had 20 people working under him in a department where they would actually have to build chainsaws. And they would have to take the engine and all the mechanical parts and put it into a body that was ergonomic and aesthetically pleasing and balanced properly and all that. To me, that's art. You know, I started for 8 years, I was on a drafting board as a designer. To me, industrial design is art. You know, it doesn't matter if you're hand-making games with marbles, it's art. You know, there's this idea of art being that fine art is some abstraction that you take out, and everything left behind isn't art. It's just that, you know, if it's conceptual, it's art, but if it's in any way practical, it's not. It's just craziness. The creativity that's inherent in every single person that we're born with, that's like driven and, you know, just baked out of us because we're taught that art falls into these little boxes is just a silly thing. This is not going to be a monthly meeting where we go through minutes of last week's meetings and adhere to Robert's Rules of Order, and you know, no, that's not what's happening. The thing that caused me to actually start this whole thing is I kept seeing articles in the paper about conversations in the town of Ashland about forming an arts and culture district. Now, I have stayed out of Ashland since we moved from there 12 years ago. When I was in Ashland, Ashland Stage Company came into town. And I told my wife, we had been living up here for about a year, and they were a local professional nonprofit theater, and I told my wife, don't let me anywhere near those people. Because I had worked in theater for a while, and I know that theater tends to be a sort of black pit that sucks your time up and produces very, very little income. I call it the event horizon, the point at which beyond nothing can escape, not even the speed of light, because the pit of need is so great. Well, I joined in one show. It was a musical. Somebody knew I could sing. They said, oh, we're short one person. And I said, sure, I'll do it. 5 years. 5 years. Being technical director, board member, set designer, puppetry teacher, which was awesome. I mean, the school was great. They had an after-school program, which was great. But, you know, it's like there really is so much that can suck your time as an artist, and so many people who want to say, oh, you can do that, and they don't value the fact that it took you years to learn how to do this, or thousands of dollars in investing in computers and software, or whatever it is, mold making materials, trial and error of $5,000 of trying to produce a product that didn't work, but it's like, hey, I learned something. I learned what didn't work. One of my favorite quotes is from Thomas Edison, when he was, as I understand it, it was in reference to a light bulb, but he had tried about 400 different ways to make this light bulb, and none of them worked. And a reporter asked him how it felt to fail 400 times. And he said, I haven't failed at all. I know 400 ways not to make a light bulb. How many do you know? You know, and it's like, you know, we need to value the learning curve of you know, the life path that we've gone through to take us to where we are, and say, you know, that is every bit as valuable as somebody who's dropped 80 grand on a four-year education, or, you know, whatever it is. So, you know, as artists, we have extreme value. So there's this idea of an arts and culture district. And I kept reading about the paper, and I was like, oh my gosh, do I want to stick my nose into this thing? Because I have done small community theater, I've done professional theater, I've done Broadway, I've done film and video production, I've been a performance artist, I've done children's storytelling. I have a very rounded experience in the arts. So I was like, well, if they're going to try this arts and culture district, I should probably at least be involved in the conversations. So I contacted Tom Wolf, who is the president of the Ashland Main Street Association. I know Tom. Jody used to teach Tom's kids piano, and we've linked our YouTube channels to each other with our Transmit Dopamine and some other things I've done in Tom's videos online. So I sent Tom a little message, and we got together for a cup of coffee at Ashland Coffee and Tea. And it just so happened to be the same day that Senator Mark Warner came to town. So after our coffee, it was kind of cool because I got to walk through town with his little entourage as he stopped into the Iron Horse and the Caboose and the bookshop and Cross Brothers, and awarded them a little certificate for their 100th year anniversary. And I've got a blog where I put up my experience with that, which is pretty cool. But here's the idea. The idea is that you create an arts and culture district in Ashland, and they're trying this all across the country, but what they're trying to do is authorize towns to declare arts and culture districts, which frees them up in certain ways in regards to zoning, in regards to state tax. And the idea is that you make it more friendly to artists to come in and actually create their art, have a presence. And the creative economy argument is that where you have the arts and culture, the business will follow. So the way to build a vibrant economy in a town is to start with us. We are the lure. We are the bait. We are the people who have value. And typically, rather than being treated as an attractive lure, we're treated like chum to attract sharks. You know, it's like people want arts, but they don't necessarily want artists. Look at those guys in the corner. They're funny looking. I mean, come on. This is Ashland. No, you know what I want? I want in the 4th of July parade us to have an Arts Alliance unit in the parade with fire spinning and belly dancing, and I want to build a giant 15-foot tall puppet. And so some of the things that I'd like to see happen in Ashland. So I'd love to see us have a visible presence. Last year I was working up in New York, and I was staying in a little town called Keyport, New Jersey. The shop I was in was actually in New Jersey, but we were doing Broadway shows. We were doing crazy big stuff for like Lady Gaga and Jennifer Lopez. I mean, it was all just super high-end stuff. And I found a nice little place, little town, that was very, very much like Ashland. It was amazing. It was on the North Jersey shore, across the Raritan Bay. You could actually see the New York City skyline. But it was this sort of sleepy little town where, like, after 9 o'clock at night, there wasn't much going on. They had something, it was called the Twilight Concert Series. And the local coffee shop, is Espresso Joe's, basically sponsored the event. I figure it would cost probably about $200 a week. So you hire a guy like a DJ, basically, who has all the sound equipment, and they set it all up, and bands come out and they play. But it's not like one band a night, it's whoever wants to, just local musicians. And they would have like 4 or 5 acts a night. I'd love to see something like that out at the library, you know? And not only safe, you know, country, folk, whatever, but it'd be awesome to have some, you know, belly dancing, fire spinning, voice spinning, spoken word guys. I mean, this is who's here. This is us, you know? Whether you're ready for us or not, we're already here. I would love to see cooperation and support for artists from nonprofit groups. So instead of the artists always being the ones being asked to do something for nothing, okay, here's my idea. And Lucinda is not here right now, but I was talking to her about this just the other day. So here's just one idea. So here's my wife Jody. She teaches piano. The economy's been rough lately. She's lost students, so she's got one small artist struggling business. There's Mark Warner comes to town, tells us that in the last 2 years, the Fortune 1000 companies in America have done really well, and they're sitting on a $2 trillion that needs to be reinvested in America. At the same time, these corporations are saying that people who are graduating from college have no creativity. That the businesses need more creative graduates. At the same time, and I refer to all this stuff on my blogs. If you guys go to the meetup thing and look at I've got a link to my blog on there, but there was just a study released for the first time in 10 years on the effect that No Child Left Behind has had on schools. And guess what? We all knew it, but they're saying, oh, there's fewer arts programs in schools because, all this standardized testing. Well, what they've also found out is that kids do better when there's art programs in schools. So you need art programs. Kids do better when they have them. Corporations need more creative graduates. Corporations have money that they're sitting on. And we have arts teachers who are struggling to make a living. So I'm looking at how can you solve this problem? Because see, as an individual teacher, as an individual artist, there's a lot of grants that you can't qualify for. You're not a nonprofit. Every single individual artist can't be a nonprofit group. So how do you sort of bridge this gap? And my idea is you find nonprofit groups to act as the middleman, as the buffer, that can accept donations from corporations that become tax deductible and make them look good because they're donating to these nice nonprofit groups. The nonprofit groups can award grants. Like let's say Lucinda's clientele are homeless single mothers. So think about the kids that she already has access to as her clients. So take a donation of $1,000, pay it to a teacher, award a grant to a homeless kid who can in no other way afford an arts education and improve his scholastic achievement. And you've just gone ding, 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 ding. It's like playing a pinball, and you just scored the high points because the ball just connected all the dots that are already sitting there. So I'm really about win-win situations. There's a lot of problems, but there's a lot of solutions that are mutually winnable. I'd love to see working artist studios in Ashland. You've got Gallery Fluxes there now. Gallery 606 unfortunately closed down, but we stay in touch with Susanna Wagner. And there's Ashland Coffee and Tea is a gallery. So there's galleries, there's places for artists to display art. There's very little working artist studio space in Ashland. And if they want people to come into Ashland, if they want the draw, I'm envisioning when you go to Colonial Williamsburg and you see glass blowers and candle makers, and it's like, you want to see the painters and the sculptors and the stuff. But there's a catch, all right? And this is the part, is people want arts. Again, they don't necessarily want artists because you know what? They might not like what you think. They might not like what you say, and they might not like what you make. So it's going to be an interesting push-pull combination. I lobbed a question there at the town council, what would you call that? Is the candidates forum? Or so last week I said, as an audience member, we were allowed to submit questions, and I asked the council members, the candidates, what is your position? And this was interesting because the previous question, the question that it followed up on is, how do you balance keeping Ashland as a sleepy little town with turning it into a vibrant economy? Because they're at odds in some way. There's opposing forces. And my question is, how do you balance preserving community standards, which varies from one place to another, versus an artist's freedom of expression, and especially in terms of censorship? Because what is fine in San Francisco isn't necessarily fine in Richmond. And what is fine in Richmond isn't necessarily fine in Ashland. And it's going to be an interesting tug of war to see all of this take place. So these are just all things that, I just want to start conversations. I don't want to be the guy who is the leader, the organizer, the person who is the face of the Ashland Arts Alliance. That's all of us, It's just that these are things that I've been chewing on, and I just see all of these problems, all of these issues, all of these opportunities, and like I said, it's just time somebody just planted a flag and said, we're here, this is a gathering spot, and everybody has responsibility and opportunity, particularly with the tools that Meetup provides as a social networking site, to take your own stance and carve your own niche and say, well, this is my particular issue. This isn't the group's issue, this is your issue. So find people who, who agree with you, but who can rally to your side, So that's where I stand, and that's why I've done this, and that's why I'm here.
Really hard time finding store, and it's like,
Come out of